Classic World of Warcraft is one of the most popular MMOs on the planet, not counting Position 1, which belongs to Retail World of Warcraft, and Position 2, which belongs to Final Fantasy XIV. Classic World of Warcraft is the third most popular Western MMO. I'm not counting Chinese or Korean MMOs because their players are free-to-play MMOs, and China's a whole different beast. I'm not even going to count any of their MMOs there because the average MMO is probably 20 or 30 million players, considering how they are and how they play their games. But in the West, Europe and NA and South America, Classic is incredibly popular. And Classic World of Warcraft is so popular that the third, fourth, fifth, and sixth most played MMO in the Western world is Classic World of Warcraft. Now, we are going to start with Classic Anniversary. And Classic Anniversary has just over 100,000 active weekly raiders. Not players, raiders. That's right, 102,000 people are raiding right now. And this is in Blackwing Lair. Blackwing Lair just came out, people are excited, they're having a good time, but even before that, there was just about 96,000 people playing. And that's not really the most interesting part. People are playing Blackwing Lair despite AQ being so soon. And everybody's actually invested despite all the problems Anniversary Realms have. For example, Flask being 600 gold for a Flask in Anniversary Realms hasn't deterred the player base from raiding. In fact, people are only raiding more and more, which brings to the fact that no matter how much they screw up or how many mistakes Blizzard makes, you cannot stop the Classic player base from playing and enjoying World of Warcraft. I know, amazing. Imagine how much of a difference the player base could make if they actually did boycotts correctly and actually forced the developers, or in this case, the people above the developers, to let the developers fix the game how it needs to be fixed. Because Anniversary does have a lot of problems that needs to be addressed that they're just not really being addressed right now, which kind of sucks. And like I said, with AQ 40 and 20 on the horizon, I do expect this to drop off a little bit, probably a 25 to 35% player base drop, but that still is about 70,000-ish active monthly players or active weekly raiders, again, not players. There is a huge portion of the player base that does not raid whatsoever. They're simply there to enjoy the world, collect things, grind things, run a couple dungeons with the guys. There are even community guilds and small, close, casual guilds that do not log their raid at all. So these numbers are not even completely accurate. This is just the people that log their raid so they can see their passes. This number could be closer to 120, 125,000 active raiders, but we will never really know unless Blizzard releases their own APIs and metrics and we can see directly from Blizzard what the numbers are. Now we're going to move on to a different game, and that is Cataclysm Classic. Classic, TBC, Wrath of the Lich King Classic, and soon to be Mists of Pandaria. Now, Classic World of Warcraft at its peak had 500,000 raiders, but for the most part it was averaging in the high 300,000s, 200,000 raiders. And you can see this is around max, 270,000-ish active raiders. People were having a good time in Classic. They were balling. Then came TBC, and TBC kind of really struggled, but it maintained over about 300,000 players up until about the last month and a bit. Wrath of the Lich King was the most popular, breaking 600,000 raiders in Naxxramas. And Naxxramas is the first raid of Wrath of the Lich King, whilst the last raid of Classic. But by the end of Wrath of the Lich King, there was just under 150,000 raiders. The lowest it had ever really been, not counting the drop from Classic to TBC, which was a 1 week break. Now the problem is Cataclysm. Cataclysm's numbers peaked to about 300,000, 320,000-ish give or take, but then it cratered off a cliff, and now it's averaging about 125,000-ish players. I don't really see this number growing for Mists of Pandaria Classic whatsoever. And I'm not saying this to be disrespectful to the Cataclysm player base, I just don't really see the numbers climbing. I think by the end of Cataclysm we might be at about 115, 110k, and then come Mists of Pandaria, I think the number's going to drop to about 100k or 90k. Now I could be wrong and it could actually climb to 150 or 200k for the first phase, but by Siege of Orgrimmar, if the game was breaking 100,000 active raiders, I would be genuinely surprised. Now, if they track looking for raid in this metric, I could easily see it being 300,000 active raiders because it's looking for raid. It's very easy. You just queue up, you go in, you have a good time, you get out. But if they don't count looking for raid, it's not going to be very high, especially by the end of Mists of Pandaria Classic. Because a lot of Classic players do not even view it as being Classic, they just view it as being the beginning or now the middle part of retail, because the whole talent change, revamp and everything, most of the retail-esque systems are Mists of Pandaria and onwards. But now that we've covered Cataclysm and we've covered Anniversary, it's time to look at Classic Era and then Season of Discovery. Now, Classic Era is somehow, to this day, averaging about 12,000 active weekly raiders. That's not counting the amount of people that log on and do raids, and people don't even log anymore. They just play the game because this is their favorite version, their favorite server. They've been playing thousands of hours on it. This isn't going to change whatsoever. I do not see Classic Era's population shifting. I could see it dropping or climbing by about 1 or 2k in that margin, but it's going to stay where it is. Classic Era will not change. It's Classic Era. But Season of Discovery is where it's interesting. Now, Season of Discovery opened with a ginormous boom. Probably the most popular experience, not counting Wrath of the Lich King's launch and Classic 2019's launch, at just shy of 500,000 weekly raiders in Black Fathom Deeps. And now this number is, just like I said, staggering. But by each consecutive phase, it dropped more. We had 327,000 peak in Noma, and then we had 185,000 peak in Sunken Temple, and Phase 3 really broke Season of Discovery because it dropped as low as 20,000 active raiders towards the very end of Sunken Temple in Phase 3. And most people thought Season of Discovery was dead. But then at MC, it peaked at around 88,000 raiders. Then Blackwing there, it peaked at about 88,500 raiders. AQ peaked at about 69,700, and now Nax has peaked at about 77,600. Phase 8 dropping very soon with the Scarlet Enclave could see this number climb as high as 100k, maybe even 125 or 150, but I do not see the Scarlet Enclave really breaking the player numbers anywhere close to 200,000 again. Now, Season of Discovery is a very popular game where there are a lot of people that play that raid old raids that don't log. Those don't get logged anymore. That log ZGs, they don't get logged anymore. They log AQ20s, which really aren't being logged anymore. The amount of pugs that are happening, Karazhans aren't being logged. There's a lot of raiding happening that isn't being covered here, as a lot of people are prepping for the next phase and the next raid tier. So, like I said, you could expect 125, even 150 in terms of raiders, but the player base numbers are going to be much higher because there's going to be a lot of people coming back just to experience a new Avalon, a brand new zone. Keep in mind, a lot of Classic players are much more casual than people really want to admit. So there's going to be a lot of people that are doing difficulty 0 or regular difficulty that do no logging. So these numbers aren't even really accurate. Again, until Blizzard releases the API and shows us the exact player numbers, we will never really know the authentic number of people playing this game mode. But this is just people raiding. Across all the versions I showcase, this is just people raiding. I didn't even touch retail. And if I showed you retail's raiding numbers, you would be shocked at how high they really were. Just counting the first week it's been out, there has been over 20,000 raid teams that have cleared this. 20,000. At the raid team sizes being 20 plus. 20,000 across multiple difficulties. Again, all the difficulties combined from normal upwards. We're looking at about, I'm not the greatest at math, let's bring up the calculator. 400,000 give or take people raiding in retail World of Warcraft. Again, that's just the people that do logs. A lot of normal guilds don't really do that. A lot of pugs don't really do that. It's just people that do actually log that into the system. So Classic overall is incredibly popular. I know there's a lot of dooming and a lot of naysaying, saying Classic is dead, it's over, but with Mists of Pandaria on the horizon, with TBC Anniversary on the horizon, with Wrath of the Lich King Anniversary on the horizon after that, weirdly enough, again, with Season of Discovery Phase 8 and a potential Phase 9 and Classic plus in the distant future, there has never really been a better time to play Classic World of Warcraft. The game is far from dead. Despite all of its problems, Classic World of Warcraft is obscenely popular, and that is not going to change. Short of the Riot MMO coming out and absolutely obliterating Classic and retail World of Warcraft, there is no real competition to the Classic ecosystem and formula because nobody's making a game like this, and there's a huge player base that loves and adores Classic despite all of its problems. Now, if they could fix the problems, that'd be amazing, but play Classic World of Warcraft. There's nothing wrong with it. It ain't perfect, but it's classic. So thank you all for watching. If you liked this video, please like and subscribe. If you hated it, understandable. Dislike and subscribe so you can hate my next video too. Thank you all for watching. Ebonheart out. Peace.